The following video will explain this department. Before performing any routine maintenance, be sure all power is properly turned off and that the machine is tagged out and locked. Always wear gloves when changing the blade and never wear gloves when operating the saw. To change the blade, adjust the upper stop limit to raise the saw arm about 6 inches or enough that the band wheel doors can be opened over the vise. Loosen the guide cap Allen bolts slightly. Turn the blade tension handle counterclockwise to release the tension on the blade. Never stand in front of the tension handle when tensioning or loosening tension on the blade. The handle is under extreme tension, and if material fatigue or failure occurs, it could spring out and injure you severely. If the saw is an H105AC, H105LAC, or the powered blade tension option has been added to the saw, blade tension is released and added by switching the switch to off and on. Raise the blade guard latch and slide the blade guard out of the way. Open the drive wheel and idle wheel covers. Push the blade out of the guide caps. Be careful because when you do this, the blade will want to untwist rapidly as it clears the guides. Remove the blade from the wheels and out of the top blade guard through the slot. Maintain control of the blade as the teeth are very sharp. If you have removed the guide caps to clean the blade guides, replace the guide caps but leave them loose enough for you to be able to slide the blade up between the carbide blade guides. Determine the correct direction for the blade teeth to face. The blade teeth must face into the direction of the cut, the direction the blade turns. Maneuver the blade around the blade brush and up over the blade wheels, sliding the blade into the slot in the upper blade guard. Do not reinsert the blade into the guide caps just yet. Be sure the blade is sitting inside the blade guide block near the idle wheel. The blade can now have some slight tension applied by twisting the blade tension handle, but only enough to help keep the blade on the blade wheels. As you tension the blade slightly, be sure to recheck that the blade is located inside the blade guide block near the idle wheel. Once the blade has slight tension applied, you can twist the blade up and into the guide caps and in between the carbide blade guides. If your saw has the cut watcher feature, you will also need to maneuver the blade around that guide as well. Be sure the blade ends up inside the backup guide block near the idle wheel and behind the blade brush. Adjust the blade tension to the proper tension. Do not over-tension the blade. Damage to the gearbox and idle wheel bearings may result. Retighten the guide cap screws. Again, screwdriver tight is about right. Check the blade brush for wear and if it needs to be readjusted. Set the brush to the correct point of contact so the brush makes light contact with the blade. The bristles need to extend to about 1/2 the depth of the teeth. In no case should the bristles extend past the gullet of the blade. If the brush is not set properly, it may cause crooked cuts and the brush will wear rapidly. To clean the blade guides, remove the guide caps and clean chips and debris from the carbide area. The carbides that are mounted to the caps are free-floating. Chips that lodge behind the free-floating carbides will prevent them from fitting squarely against the blade, resulting in crooked cuts or blade failure. Cleaning chips out of the guide caps will help prolong guide and blade life while ensuring straight cutting. After installing new blade, double-check the guide cap tightness. They should be screwdriver tight. Do not over-tighten them as this will greatly reduce carbide life and impede blade performance. Using an Allen wrench, tighten the bolt tight. Then back it off 1/4 turn and spin it snugly, using enough force to be screwdriver tight. Several repetitions of this procedure will help in achieving the correct tightness. After a new blade is installed, jog the band motor briefly, just long enough so that the blade will track to its natural position on the band wheels, then stop the motor. After the blade stops turning, check the Allen head bolt tightness again. While the band wheel doors are open, clean chips that may have accumulated inside the band wheel doors and other areas that are exposed. Clean chips from all viceways, shuttleways, frame rails, and perform general chip and remnant cleanup daily. For long and reliable service, the filter lubricator should be properly maintained. The purpose of the lubricator is to provide a small amount of lightweight tool oil to the air cylinders. The filter helps remove moisture from compressed air. The water bowl should be drained at least weekly and probably more often in areas of high humidity. Excess moisture in the pneumatic system can cause problems with gauges, regulators, and solenoid. This lubricator is critical to operation of the air cylinders. If the saw is run with the lubricator dry for very long, the air-operated arm and vices will not work smoothly and damage to the cylinder seals will occur. The lubricator reservoir should be checked periodically to ensure that it has sufficient oil to provide lubrication to the air cylinder. Look through the sight window to check oil level. Be sure the air supply is turned off first and the air is allowed to bleed out of the system. Then pull down the sliding lock lever and twist the reservoir until the tabs in the reservoir cup line up with the slots in the housing, and pull the reservoir down and out until the cup is clear of the housing and siphon tube. The water trap should be removed occasionally and cleaned out. The trap cup is removed using the black sliding lock lever, just like the oil reservoir cup. Check the water trap valve regularly and drain water from the water trap cup. Water in the air lines can damage the cylinders. Humid climates require more attention to this water trap. A slight amount of air must pass out of the air bypass valve continuously. There is an adjustment screw that can be opened slightly until the air can be heard hissing out of the valve. If air is not allowed to pass through the valve, the arm will work with a jerky motion. On the A1 saws, the air bypass valve is located on top of the console. Check the oil level in the oil reservoir tank, which, depending on your saw model, would be located under the arm or on the base of the saw. It can be distinguished by the oil tube that acts as a sight tube for checking the oil level. When the arm is raised, the oil level will be low in the sight tube, so an accurate sight determination can be made best when the arm is down on a horizontal style saw. Lubricate the grease fitting on the idle wheel monthly, but do not over-lubricate. The grease is not being applied to provide lubrication, but to act as a barrier to help keep out small metal chips and debris. Over-lubrication will shorten the life of the bearing. Lubricate the screw and nut on the manual blade tension yearly. A sheet metal cover plate will require removal to access this area. Change the oil in the gear reducer at least every 5 years. The plug on the top side of the gearbox is used to check the oil level using a bent wire to dip into to determine the level using the wire like a dipstick. The plug near the bottom of the gearbox is removed to drain the gearbox oil out. Use Mobil SHC 634 synthetic gear oil. Never use an oil containing sulfur in the gearbox. It will attack the bronze. If the saw is a miter saw, extra care should be given to keeping the area around the protractor scale clean and free of chips and debris.